Prof, let me come back to you, and we'd love to get to the elephant in the room, and this is the issue pertaining to the JKIA takeover. Now, aviation workers went through their union and had a meeting and a sit-down with the CS yesterday, came out and issued a presser that they've actually ended their strike and given it a period of 10 days to look into those proposals and see how to move forward. Now, when you're looking at this from an economical perspective, this is a PPP. Adani got into this with the government. They've done their metrics, they've done their calculations, and as a company, profit has to be gotten at some point in time. Now, with this strike and this issue coming from perspective that it could very well fall or not come to fruition, and the union members saying, you know what, moving forward, there's no decision that you're going to make without us putting pen to paper. What are we looking at in terms of this deal staying afloat and what has to give?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think that the PIP, the PIP framework is under the PPP Act. Yeah. If you read Section 40, it's very clear how the PIP works. But I want to start by saying this because instead of, without calling names, you know, PIP has never delivered value. Actually, 96% of all the PIPs in the world have not worked because of the fact that they lack transparency, because normally they are always hived into secrecy and confidentiality, because I saw the letter which was coming from the office of the president clarifying the matter, but this is after. So public participation could have been done by these airport workers. So PIP never works because in the PPP framework, there are two options. One, you go PIP, which is a publicly initiated project, where someone privately initiates a project. The word private is very important because that's why it should be very confidential. But there's also called solicited. Solicited, whereby a government looks at the airport, because the letter which was in from State House, I'm sorry to tell the president, whoever is advising is misleading you. Because if the state had identified a need to improve the airport to give the numbers of passengers, cargo, and the rest, then it should not be a PIP, because it is the state soliciting whom they want. But privately initiated projects whereby a private entity outside the government comes and gives you a proposal by saying, this is what I can do for you to make your airports much better. So that letter looks more of PPP than PIP. That letter, because the government saw the need of how many passengers to handle. Looking at the region, airport has done, for example, Tanzania is ahead of us, Ethiopia is ahead of us, Rwanda, all this. So it should be government now soliciting who can do it well. So that is not a PIP framework from what I know as an expert. Secondly, there is something very wrong about this country, and I ask myself, what is working and what is not working? The only thing that is working very well is corruption. Because you look at NHIF, they can explain to you how some money went away with the 21 billion shillings without a problem, isn't it? But no one will tell you how healthcare is working, education sector is working, how, let's say, cost of living, the economy is working. The president has advisors. Are they advising him only on corruption, or also they're advising him on how to turn around an economy? As far as I'm concerned, those advisors are not helping him. And let me adjust, because economy is very interesting here. Can you imagine that the Adani deal, if you look at it from where I speak, Adani has not done any of the iconic airports in the world. Because if you look at some of the best airports in the world, for example, the one in Singapore, the one in Doha, they are not done by Adani. If you want to be competitive, because I look at Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, they promise us we shall become the next Singapore, isn't it? Why don't we have the company that did Singapore Airport doing for us to become the next Singapore? Why don't we have a country that a company that did the one of Doha to look like the next Doha? Why don't we benchmark and pick the best in the class? Because if you want to win a Premier League, you don't pick a player like Olunga to be the striker. You'll pick a Ronaldo, a Messi.
But Prof, the two facets right here. Of course, when you talk about the best to do something, the cost factor comes into play. You have to bear the cost to get the best. And often or not, when that is raised, it brings another issue. People would say, why not opt for a cheaper option.
No.
And secondly, the other argument for Adani is that this is not a first-time project. They manage quite a number of airports, I believe 13 or so.
Yeah, but of course,
yeah.
of course, we have cases where in the US, they have actually been stopped from doing any business there because of credibility. We have the issues in UK and the rest. But even that put aside, the way to get the best is not through PIP.
Okay.
The way to get the cheapest is not PIP, it's the way solicited, where many people will bring their proposals. And I even don't like the letter written by the President's office because it was just explaining why. The question is not about the issues of expanding the airport. The question is why Adani? The question Kenya asking, why Adani? The question is not about we want to expand the airport, create more jobs. That one everyone knows. The President should not act as if Kenyans don't know what they want and he's the one who knows. Okay. I'm the one who wants a job. So if I want a job, I know I want a job. But how do you give me a job? Do you auction my country for the sake of giving me a job? In fact, then let's get America come and buy Kenya and give all of us jobs, but we lose sovereignty. Okay. What we are losing, which is sovereignty, is more important than talking about a jobs. And let me tell you why I'm not happy. Adani is giving us, if you look at the figure, around 260 billion shillings investment, isn't it? Do you know KAA, Kenya Airports Authority, all the airports in the country, they have a revenue between 18 to 25 billion annually. Okay. And the profit we're talking about there, if you talk about the revenue, 18 billion, if I just use the lowest figure, 18 billion, for 30 years is 540 billion in terms of revenue. Okay. So why do we sell to you an airport at 260 billion when it can generate 540 billion? Meaning that internally generated revenues and profit can actually be able to deliver this airport to us without auctioning it. So according to me, I don't see, as an economist, I don't see why we need to sell our soul to Adani. Remember, an airport, and there are some things to consider. When Adani will start running that airport, even the cultural aspect of the airport will change. The employees, remember, Indian companies, we know what they do here. So according to me, the fundamental question is not those expansions we want to do. The question is, why Adani? And this is just about, for example, you see now people are coming and saying that somebody must have been paid some money so that this happens. And I'm happy them saying that they have not signed anything. If they are not signed anything with Adani, let them drop Adani and take the solicited process and drop the PIP.
Okay. Well, let me come to you, Moesh, and look at this from a legislative perspective. This Adani deal was not shared with Kenyans. It was done in secrecy for one reason or the other. And Kenyans are super scared of what might be in the workings behind the scenes that we are not aware of. Basically, what Kenyans are saying, if it wasn't for Senator Onyonka to actually come out and say he was sent for a document, we wouldn't have known about this deal, which now brings the question, what role do our legislators play? Because you guys represent Kenyans and we expect you to actually bring to light certain things. Where do you think this deal leaves legislators in terms of basically legislating and being in the know-how of what affects Kenyans at the core?
First and foremost, let me say, in this current parliament, I have just witnessed something very, very new in this particular regime, where public utilities, public assets, public entities like this one, deal can be set on the table and agreed without the involvement of the House. And the deal is over. There is an element where there are cited number of entities which has not performing well, and there's a proposal of privatization. That element of privatization is not a business that actually you can just leave the treasury and the executive just to handle, and there is no single say of the National Assembly. Then the representation of the people is nowhere there. So I would say the route we have taken is a bad route, because things can be done at that top level, and then no single knowledge is there. And we may keep on blaming members, registrators, but things are cooked and finished at a very different high level without involvement of the National Assembly. So I would say, even the current situation that we are in matter to do with the issues to do with Adani, what should not be escaped from the public view is the constitutional mandate, which is very clear that there has to be a public participation. No matter what process you want to use, involve the public in the process. Let them have their say on it. And let them keep their input, so that as much as you have the final result, then that result can be accepted by the public. But if you lock them out from the process, and you want them to know at the tail end, then there will be always hit. And that's why it is now impacting in the route it is impacting, because the fate of the workers is not known. Nothing is known. It has been a process under the carpet. But the question is, to whose interest are you keeping secrets under? Because if you are a civilian government, you represent the people. And let me tell you, the sovereign is the people. Then, if you leave the sovereign out, then whose interest are you taking care of?
Okay. All right, Ruth, let's look at some figures right here. And Prof has just mentioned the numbers. We're looking at an entity collectively that generates revenue in the tune of the figures that Prof gave. And the post-COVID period within the aviation sector has generally witnessed some sort of growth. We're even looking at the passenger freight moving up from about 9 to about 12 million passengers that are currently being handled. So there could be some growth in terms of the profit margins. One would beg the question, when you're looking at these figures that you're generating in revenue and the profit margins, and also just looking at contracting this through PPP, would it not then make sense economically for the government to now explore other options and do it by themselves, probably go out and get a loan at a cheaper interest to do this and actually contract differently? What would make economical sense in such a scenario for an entity that is actually making profit?
Thank you so much. And one of the things that we have said is that what happened is that most of these institutions were to be privatized, but that could not happen because, of course, the pushback that came, and we are where we are. Are we agreeing that we need expansion, or Kenya stands a good point of expansion? There is no one who is disagreeing that the fact that Kenya is a hub. We are seeing increasing number of passengers actually even post-COVID. Even before COVID, there is still room for expansion. Have we tried to do that previously on our own? I can tell you, Alan, and I know you've seen the improvements that have been done in the airport in the last 5 years, and good improvements. And when it rains, some of the areas are leaking. We know our job, our kind of job. And one of the things that I can appreciate, the government is appreciating the fact that they need to set the put the JKIA to a world map, you know, into a world-class kind of an airport. And with that in mind, I will look at other projects that have been done properly or well in Kenya. And one of the projects I normally say Expressway is a good project. It's really helping Kenyan. It's a good PPP. You know, it's helping, you know, and could have Kenyan done such a job? I'm not sure, because I think if you can look at the last 10, even the last 20 years, even during the Kibaki time, by the time he invited the Chinese to start expansion, we've seen good projects and a lot of a good kind of standard that can be able to be set and open Kenyan to a world map. You know, we want to go to the next phase of the paradigm of this country based on where we are going as a people. Why do I say that? Because first, Kenyan, from an education perspective, people are really educated and people want to go to the next level. So this airport should actually be expanded so that we are not competing with countries that we are already ahead of them, like Ethiopia and Seda, or even other countries that are really upcoming as small as Rwanda. Is there a business case? Yes, there is a business case for this country to expand the airport. However, what we are saying, the route or the process that has been used is a problem. That is, in terms of the numbers, actually, those numbers in terms of the income that KIA is bringing right now can triple. Can even go to, you know, can be multiplied many times for the benefits of workers, whether it's KIA workers, whether it's those people, other amenities that have been proposed in the airport, whether it's that mall, whether it's a hotel, other things that have been proposed that are going to really bring even employment level for this country high. However, the clauses that came out, whether true or not, that came out to the light, and most of them that really went out to the public yesterday, is they were showing that yes, the deal is good, but Adani is having the upper hand. I mean, in terms of employment, in terms of the people that is going to be bring on the ground, in terms, he was showing, like, it was being shown that this person has been given too much leeway. We are not interested, but we are also looking at the welfare of Kenyans. Last week I was in a show and I was discussing an issue, especially when the president was in Fosak in China, and I was saying we have seen technocrats in this country fail Kenyans. And this time we say the technocrats did not advise the president properly, even when it came to Finance Bill 2024. Here again, the technocrats were also being discussed in China, because the road from Rironi all the way to Malaba was being discussed, and already money had been put in place, like 40 billion to start the construction of that road. Are the technocrats going to fail Kenyan? Now we are here. The question I'm asking, is it the technocrats still failing Kenyan? No, there is more hand to the technocrats.
Okay, Ruth, let me come in and just get another perspective into the discussion. We are talking about a country implementing austerity measures and basically being truthful to ourselves. Let's look at two clauses, because I've had an opportunity to skim through that proposal. One of them, when you look at Adani, says groundsmen are going to reduce. Currently, at the JKIA, I believe they have about 6 groundsmen handling issues. Adani is saying they only need 1 groundsperson to do that job. When you're looking at parking fee, Kenya Airways is our national carrier, so they pay a slightly lower parking fee of give or take about, I want to say $100 or so, and other carriers do it in larger tunes, in the tune of $1,000 or something, because they give preference to the national carrier, which happens in other jurisdictions. When KQ goes into a different jurisdiction, they pay a higher amount as compared to the national carrier. But Adani is saying, no, there's nothing like this. All carriers, once you land at JKIA, there's a standardized rate of give or take, say, about $1,000 of parking fee. Now, when you're looking at these measures from an economical perspective, they're very intentional, and they're looking at other aspects in terms of basically trying to be truthful to yourself. We have to do this to achieve this. The question is, are we ready to ask ourselves these difficult questions, even if Adani is the problem right here?
Let me tell you, if there's one thing that will make Kenyan work, or even work more, and remember, work is what contributes to the economic growth of this country. One of the things that supports that is patriotism. If you joke with the patriotism of Kenyans, believe you me, that actually, whenever that is stirred, that is what takes people to the street. Whenever their patriotism is not taken into account. And one of the things, actually, one of the issues that brought even the workers yesterday to, because some things cannot be explained. How then, what is the business model that is taking people from needing 6 workers to 1? What is the business model? What is the mechanization? What are the systems, or what processes are you going to bring on board that are going to necessitate limiting of need of workers? Then, you know, if there's something Kenyans have been so patient about, and you people can bear me witness, is KQ. KQ has made losses for the longest. For the longest. And Kenyans waited for that thing until it made profit. They were very patriotic to it, because they were like, they still want the pride of Africa to continue. If you touch KQ, believe you have touched. Actually, leaders in this country, one of the things that is happening is that the fact that there is no connection with the ground. And that is the same thing that happened to the public participation that was happening even with the finance bill. The major issue that brought problems is the public participation. And one of the things that leaders in this country are ignoring and throwing out of the window, and making the biggest mistake at the 3rd year, when we're entering the 3rd year of the term of this leadership, is ignoring common mwananchi and what the ground is. There are things you cannot continue suppressing. I want to say, we saw yesterday the workers' union saying that they have called off the strike. But does that mean that has called off the issues that already Kenyans are battling with as far as that deal is concerned? That is the security of the Kenyan. Are Kenyans still feeling secure? Because whenever somebody is feeling secure, even with yourselves, even with any relationship, anything or anyone that is insecure is very destructive. That person needs to be handed off.
Let me come to you, Mheshimiwa, before I go to Prof. I mean, Ruth raised an important issue right there that I believe many Kenyans do not necessarily talk about. She said maybe we need to ask ourselves why Kenyan professionals are not trusted with our projects. Is it a matter that we are not having qualified people to do the job, or it has to deal with our ethics as a country in terms of actually delivering on these projects?
I think she has alluded to one of the very most important aspects.
Yeah.
That element of patriotism.
Yeah.
Any time that, in fact, whether you are an expert in this particular field or another, but you don't have the country at heart, then it tells you you don't value the country in your mind or in your mindset. Yeah. And I would say this country sometimes our professionals does very good jobs. Because if you can go back to what Kibaki did during the Easterner, he opened a lot of bypasses, Thika superhighways, very magnificent projects. But look at the smaller issue to do with SGR. As much as the SGR is a very important project, then the same professionals took Kenya to a route of a very high cost rest of that. Because I would say that, in fact, comparing with what is the same as SGR in Tanzania, it is done halfway what has costed this country. And it was a G2G. It was not a national tender. And therefore it tells that there our professionals failed us. Because in terms of costing, there was a lot of exaggeration. And you couldn't understand, why do you want Kenya to pay all those billions and millions of money going to waste? Because actually the costing could be very actual, where even the depth that we are owning today could be lesser than the level we are. So in terms of that, there are areas that actually the professionals take the country well, and there are other areas that actually they also does opposite to the country.
All right, Prof, let me give you the opportunity to respond before we take the break.
Yeah, so first and foremost, on the issue of technocrats, I think that our CBC was supposed to solve this problem. Because a human being is not just about the head. The head is where the technocrat is, but the heart. If you don't have a heart, you can actually use the head against the society. We've seen people who have used their brilliance, their technical qualification, against their own country. We saw the case of people who have used their financial engineering to steal money from a country. And you see this pen, stealing with a pen is more dangerous than a gun. Because most of the thieves and corruption, for example, the one in HNF there, it's been a pen. A pen, the Bible, and a suit have become the most dangerous weapons of stealing in this country. Because even in Parliament, all these people who are being sworn in have been passed through Parliament. They have been sworn and approved in Parliament. And parliamentarians also, they swear with the Bible. The president the same, Masengeli the same. All these people, they use the Bible and the pen and the suit and the constitution to do all the evil they are doing. So according to me, no matter how technocrat you are, the issue is, are you using your technocrat ability for the nation or against the nation? Because some people have used otherwise. The second thing I want to talk about in the issue of PPP. Ruth, do you know that public sector? I'm an expert in public policy and even these PPPs. They say all public sectors, not just in Kenya, but even in Spain, in US and the rest, public sector always get the wrong end of the stick in PPPs because the private sector are born with efficiency. That's why you're hearing the issue of removing these grantsmen from 4 to 1. Yeah, yeah. They come with efficiency. Yeah. But you see, public sector is more with functionality. They want the things to be functional. So every time the private sector sit down, private sector come, for example, Adani sat down to look for what is the kill they can make against Kenya. So even when I talk about the public PPP, which was done between Spanish government and so many companies that turned Barcelona just before the Olympic, the private companies got the better end of the stick against even as good functional country like Spain. That's why I always say that mostly if a government knows what they want, for example, Alan, I don't know you are married now because last time we met you are not yet. When you go and kneel down and propose to a woman, would you marry me? Do you know when the woman says yes, she does not know what she's signing to because you're the one who has proposed. You're the one who knows what she's going to go through. So her saying yes, she does not know. But no, for you, you know very well, even when you want your wedding, how it should look like, but you will try to pretend as if you have no idea and you're consulting, but you know. So the person who proposes knows exactly what he wants to do with the deal. So if Kenyan government waited for Adani to propose to them, Adani is the one holding the yam and the knife. So they cut the way they want. Then another thing I want to say here is that I look at the agreement also. I think it's good for Kenyans to know the following. The Kenya needed a new runway because of the fact, for example, if one plane was to stall in the runway, it will be problematic because they have to wait around 4 hours investigations. Because when a plane stalls in a runway, you don't just pick it out. 4 hours to investigate what happens. During that time, you are diverting all the flights. We needed a new runway. But Adani has said when they begin, they'll begin with the city part of the airport, building the hotels, restaurants, so that they'll make more money and they work. And I can tell you, if you ever borrow money from the bank, when you borrow money from the bank, you start working for the bank. You stop working for yourself. So for these 30 years, Kenyans won't work for themselves. They're working for Adani. Then secondly, in that same deal, you will find that for these 30 years, Adani will ensure they get what they want fast. Just like a bank, when you borrow money, the bank will make you, first of all, pay for the interest before the principal. So even here, we will be paying the profit of Adani in the beginning, before actually we go to pay the principal, which they are bringing, which is 260,
around 240
billion shillings. So as far as I'm concerned, I can tell you without a doubt that Kenya will be worse 30 years down the line if they go to bed with Adani, as opposed to if they withdraw this deal and come with solicited proposal, which will give them the matrices. I want this, I want this, I want that.
Well, you've had it right there on issues pertaining to the Adani deal. We want to take a short break right to New Dawn. When we get back, we continue the conversation.